want to talk a little about the book, but not too much. There are so many good reasons for this book, I think. And Steven, I think, mentioned a few. I would say that, firstly, it fills a gaping hole. I mean, I really do think that anger has been forgotten. You know, anger specialists refer to it as the forgotten emotion. And I'm going to talk to some bleary-eyed psychiatrists about this. It's just, I'm going to give two statistics that are interesting, I think, that speak to this. About a third of all abnormal textbooks do not have the word anger in the index. Is that odd? Does that seem odd? I mean, this is one of the basic emotions. It's one of the largest sources of misery, individually and interpersonally, for people, for humans, and it's just largely neglected. And the other one I wanted to give was that when it is mentioned, aggression is mentioned, actual physical violence, 10 times more frequently than anger, which is, I think, interesting given that anger is 10 times more frequent than aggression. Aggression is dying out, it's being phased out. We're getting better at controlling violence, but I think we're no less angry than we ever were. And I think that, you know, better conditions of living and more laws in place means that, you know, it's a safer place to live. And public executions and burning witches at the stake is slowly dying out. I think it's more or less died out. But I think we've just shifted to being angry about different things. Like in the toilet at Fisher Library, there's an angry petition from the student union about not giggling at cross-dressers that pee in the urinals. That's an issue now that we're very angry about. Or of course, you know, your typical day-to-day kitchen sink anger that we have now. It's rampant. And so that's a major reason why Ross and I wanted to get into this field, just to, you know, plow this really rich ground. The other reason, of course, that Steven also alluded to is just that the extant anger management literature out there is pretty dodgy. It's really, I've got a collection going of about over 100 now anger books. It's become an obsession. I think it started just as procrastination, to be honest. I felt like I was doing something, but and the stuff you see in them is just enough to make you really quite furious, except that we're obviously not that kind of emotion. Like, here are some of the things that they recommend. They recommend exposure, some of them. So that they recommend that you get an angry scene and play it again and again and again to yourself. Just like a picture of your wife nagging at you. You go, pick up your bloody towels and just watch it over and over again as if it was a stimulus you could just get used to. Self-esteem work is nice, and that's like a major thing that's done in anger these days. Try to boost their self-esteem. Of course, the literature suggests quite the opposite. They're not struggling with low self-esteem. Maybe people are quite the opposite. They're more sort of closer to the narcissistic end. They feel quite secure in themselves. They love themselves. It's other people. But, you know, venting is a big one. Get it out, express it, all this stuff, which we know is not only useless, but actually counterindicated, makes it worse. And so we wanted to just update the literature and write something that was more in line with current thinking, which is obviously that anger is driven by the way you think. It's cognitive. So we wanted to just get some good old hard-nosed cognitive challenging into a book. And we wanted to do so in a more radical way than what's been done before. I think that there are some cognitive books out there that they're a little bit soft for my liking. We're more in the kind of Ellis school of thought, where we really want to take them on. You know, we really want to debunk the Anger fallacies. And really, if we had to summarize the premises of the book, for those of you who don't want to read it, perhaps, it really comes down to two things. We want to try to prove, and this is ambitious, I think, we want to try to prove that anger is useless and that it's irrational. Now, to unpack that a little bit, having given it years and years of thought and thrashed it out, over probably about 2,500 in-depth meetings in Russ's office, we've arrived at the conclusion that anger is not entirely useless, because there are some exceptional circumstances where it is useful. Circumstance 1, unskilled physical fighting. If you possess no skill, backed against a corner and have to fight with your fists, anger could value add. We're conceding that. Method acting angry scenes. Hate sex and hate crimes. I think we thought anger could value add for them. And then we have a very specific set of circumstances, which is when there's one-off negotiations with opponents in weak or desperate positions with whom an ongoing relationship is unimportant, and who have no opportunity for deceit or revenge, and where any onlookers that you have future dealings with will not think any less of you because of it, including yourself. So yeah, it's not actually that radical a position. We are allowing for quite a few exceptional circumstances where anger is quite useful. And unfortunately, they're very few and far between. And of course, we go hard after the shoulds that drive anger, angry expectations, and the kind of righteousness of angry people, which we really try to knock on its head and debunk. And we don't, where we, I think, will create some controversy, is that we don't kind of duck and weave and say, well, some of the time anger is perfectly rational, but some of the time it's a bit silly and idiosyncratic. We don't just pick and choose the things we happen to not be angry about and say that's irrational, but save a few little choice tidbits that we try to preserve. We just go hard after the thinking underneath it. These are good reasons to write a book, but I think what actually psychologically motivated it was probably something more basic, like just finding it a bit appalling. I think when we see scenes of anger, when we see, you know, the kid just screaming in the shopping centre, or the parents screaming back, or we get the neighbour from next door just rapping his cane against the door when you're trying to play the piano at 3 in the morning. I think a lot of us experience, in my case, I think a bit of embarrassment. I think it's a very embarrassing emotion, anger, to be around. If anyone has angry partners, parents, uncles, and I think that there is a sense that it's dumb and obnoxious emotion. I think that gave rise to an argument which is not really a very intellectual one, to be honest, but we call the aesthetic argument in the book, where we just try to get across the idea of it's not a good look. You look like a bit of a tosser when you lose your shit. And it's not an intellectual stance. It's more like a smear campaign, really. It's like, it reminds me of it's like the name and shame at the IGA down there. They take photos of people shoplifting and say, oh, you know, this man, he likes to put things in his pants, including the Heinz beans. We're trying to do that, which is tough to do. I mean, we ended up just painting lots of kinds of pictures and scenes of people losing it, and then contrasting it with calmer, more peaceful, kind of cooler reactions to things. Have a little look at the opening of that chapter if you're interested in how we sort of ended up going about it. It's interesting, our original title for the book was not The Anger Fallacy. It was, Where's My Fucking Ham? Should we have gone with that? Should we have gone with that? I was just worried about attracting angry anti-Semites, but it came from an anecdote that Ross told me. I might be in the details wrong, but it was something about a fellow, who was stunned to lose it over the course of a day planning a family barbecue. And, his wife said, "Oh, we need more ham." And he's like, "I thought we had everything." She said, "Oh, I've got to prepare the stuff. Can you nip off and get it?" And he went shopping for it. Going, I shouldn't have to do this. And gets the ham, brings it back, and she's like, "Oh, honey, I forgot the dishes. Can you go grab them from the kitchen?" He's like, grabs them, and then finally he gets to sitting down and relaxing after he's worked hard all week. And he says, "Where's my sandwich?" She makes him one. And he takes a bite and looks, and there's no ham in his sandwich. And that's when he just snapped. And apparently storms off, kicking a table over on his way, with all the guests, family and friends just sort of looking aghast. And I think he then walked around the corner and double-checked the sandwich and found that there was ham. He'd just taken a bite around and missed it, which I think he was mortified about and never told her. Later she said, "Look, I'm really sorry, honey, don't take it for granted." And he said, "It's all right, I forgive you." He rose above it. But we thought, doesn't that capture something just kind of idiotic, ham-fisted, I suppose, about anger, except, yeah. But I suppose the reason I shied away from that title is because his error in that scene was trivial. It was the facts of the case that he got. But we have a chapter on that, getting your facts straight. But that's the less interesting part of how angry people are faulty in our view. It's, even if you had forgotten the ham, wouldn't it be nice if it didn't ruffle him, didn't upset him? He was able to just understand the circumstances that led to forgetting it, or not care about it, or find it humorous. This is what we want, I suppose, ultimately, is to lead people, whether they have strong anger disorders in the clinical range or not, to just meditate on the kinds of things that lead to us losing our shit. Make us more peaceable and chilled, where violence has already started to diminish.